Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to look at a few things coming up in the next week on our On the Horizon segment. And then we're going to look a little bit further. We're going to go through the rest of the year and pick out some of our top picks in the movies, video games, TV, and we're doing a separate category for, Marvel Studios, just because otherwise, it would dominate too much of the other list because we talk about a lot of Marvel stuff here. So we created a separate category for that. We picked out a total of 23 things to talk about, so we're calling that segment 23 for 23. Let's get started with our On the Horizon segment, though. On the horizon. On the horizon. So, The Last of Us is coming on Sunday, January 15th to HBO. Miracle Workers, End Times, is coming on Monday, January 16th to TBS. Night Court, which is a revival of a show I remember being really bored by reruns of when I was a kid, is coming on Tuesday, January 17th on NBC. Junji Ito Maniac, Japanese Tales of the Macabre, is coming on Thursday, January 19th to Netflix. That 90s Show is also coming on Thursday, January 19th to Netflix. Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden are both coming on January 19th to the PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Switch, and PC. The Legend of Vox Machina is coming on Friday, January 20th to Amazon Prime. That's for its second season. And Fire Emblem Engage is coming out on Friday, January 20th on the Switch. So that's what's coming up on the horizon. And now to our full topic this week, 23 for 23. We're going to be talking about some of the big movies, shows, video games, everything coming this year. Some stuff we picked because it's stuff that we're really excited about. Some stuff we picked up because there's something to talk about that's interesting. Some stuff we picked because we just want to hate on it and we want to spend some time blasting how horrible it is. I don't know how much of that there is, but some of that's there. So
hopefully, not too much of that.
Yeah, we picked things that there's something to talk about, though. So
yes,
we're gonna start things off with movies. The first movie we're talking about is Scream 6, which is coming out to theaters on March 10th. This is going to take place in New York. They leave the quiet little suburban town that the series takes place in for the most part and move out to New York City. This is going to be the first of the Scream movies without Neve Campbell.
Yeah.
And this one's also going to feature the return of both Jenna Ortega, who was in Scream 5, and Hayden Panettiere, who was in Scream 4, which was quite a bit before Scream 5. So she's making a kind of long-awaited return, I guess.
Right,
You're kind of our resident Scream fan. So what are you excited about with this?
I'm excited that the change of location, first of all. They're doing Jason Takes Manhattan, but hopefully with more Manhattan this time.
Does that mean that Ghostface is going to punch someone's head off?
I hope so.
That's the first thing I think about whenever I think of Jason Takes Manhattan.
It's literally the best scene in that entire movie. So
the guy going, come on, box me. And he's trying to punch Jason and then Jason punches his head and it goes flying off the building.
Yes, that is just chef's kiss. The rest of that movie is horse shit, but that scene is fantastic. But no, yeah, this sounds good. It sounds like there might be more than two Ghostface killers in this one.
This time it's everybody who lives in New York is a Ghostface killer, and the only person who isn't is Jenna Ortega. Because
apparently there's a scene where they come across a Scream museum with the costumes of all the previous Ghostface killers, and then they notice all the masks are missing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not a good sign.
Nope. So it should be a fun time.
So that's Scream 6 coming on March 10th. We have a movie called 65 coming on March 17th. This is directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who wrote The Quiet Place. It stars Adam Driver, and it's produced by Sam Raimi. And it follows a guy who crash lands on an unknown planet planet that actually turns out to be Earth from 65 million years ago. And it's him and another passenger, the only other living passenger, at least from the beginning of the movie, trying to survive 65 million BC with dinosaurs and stuff.
That sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be honest.
It's like Turok the Dinosaur Hunter. It's like sci-fi guns and dinosaurs.
Yes, Adam Driver with sci-fi guns and dinosaurs. How can you go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. We've only seen like one trailer for it. There's not too much information. It's not part of a franchise, so it's hard to kind of know much more than that, but just the premise is pretty exciting.
Yes.
Next up, we have John Wick Chapter 4. It's coming out on March 24th. This is going to see the return of Keanu Reeves, of course, as John Wick, Lawrence Fishburne, Ian McShane as Winston, the guy that runs the Continental Hotel, and Lance Reddick from Lost, also returning for his role as the kind of concierge of the hotel or whatever.
So you introduced me as our resident Scream expert. So as our resident John Wick expert, what are you expecting?
So I think the John Wick movies have gotten worse with each new one. They're still good. They're still fun to watch. They still have some of the best like action and stunt work you'll see, like best fight scenes and kind of some cool ideas there and stuff. But the story just gets less and less probable. Like the first one's just a straight up revenge story. It's like his wife died. They killed his dog and stole his car, and he wants like to get back at that. And then you find out like, oh my God, he's this really scary like hitman that everybody knows that he's this crazy badass hitman, and oh my God, these people fucked with the wrong guy. Kind of, that's what it is, you know? It's a very simple, straightforward action movie. And one of the things that was really cool about it was that it had a lot of lore and like world building. There's like this hotel that criminals stay at, and there's like this code that, you know, if you break, then you'll be like hunted down and killed, or you have like a warrant put out on you. And there's like this gold coin currency that's used that's like, you know, just for the underground. And so there's all this kind of like world building aspects, and the other movies like really lean into it. And as cool as all that stuff is, it just gets so improbable as it goes on. Like it just gets more and more ridiculous to the point where it's like the first one kind of felt heightened but still believable, and then the other ones feel like just way out there, but they're still a lot of fun to watch. That's like the main thing. And they keep bringing in more and more cool people into the movies. This movie is bringing in Donnie Yen, who is Papa in Shang-Chi. Bill Skarsgård, who is Pennywise the Clown in It, is in this one as well. Hiroyuki Sanada from Lost. He was the guy that ran the temple in the last season of Lost. And Clancy Brown, the Kurgan from Highlander, is in this as well. This version of the movie, the fourth chapter. So yeah, I mean, it's going to have a lot of cool action. It's going to have some cool actors. It's going to have some cool, like, world building and mythos stuff going on, but it's just gotten less and less probable. Also this year, we have that Continental series, which is tied into it as well, which follows a young version of Ian McShane's character. So it'll be interesting to see how directly all that stuff ties together, since they're both coming out this year. But it looks like it's going to be pretty fun. That's on March 24th. We have something we're both really looking forward to since we're big Nintendo fanboys, and that is the Super Mario Brothers movie coming on April 7th, starring Chris Pratt, Anya Taylor-Joy, Charlie Day, Jack Black, Keegan-Michael Key, Seth Rogen, Fred Armisen, and featuring some voice capacity role by Charles Martinet that we don't really know what that is yet.
They're keeping that a secret.
Yeah, this is done by Nintendo and Illumination Animation. Miyamoto's heavily involved, and it happens also to be happening the same year as they're opening up the Nintendo World theme park in Universal Studios Hollywood.
I'm so hyped for this movie. The trailer's absolutely amazing. The attention to detail, the care and love put into representing this franchise is apparent from everything they showed. It looks fantastic. It looks...
But don't know you're supposed to hate it because Chris Pratt's in it?
Oh, yeah, I guess, yeah. Okay, yeah, let me... Chris Pratt sucks as Mario. There, we got that out of the way. Now back to talk about this movie. So, I mean, it looks better than anything I was imagining this movie was going to be when it was announced.
Yeah, I knew I was going to watch it because I'm a Nintendo fanboy, yes. So I got to watch it. I knew that was the case, but I was kind of nervous, like, oh, how bad is this going to be?
There's a distinction for me because you say Nintendo fanboy, but I'm a Mario fanboy, specifically. So I have high standards for this stuff.
Yeah, I knew I was going to watch it. It was just a matter of if I was going to like it or not. And everything we've seen of this, every time we see something new from this, it looks better than it did before. So I'm super psyched for it. We've talked about this before when the trailers were revealed. We talked about it in news segments on this podcast. So yeah, I think we're both pretty psyched for this.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have Evil Dead Rise coming on April 21st. This is produced by Sam Raimi, Rob Tappert, and Bruce Campbell. It's written and directed by Lee Cronin, who did the movie The Hole in the Ground. And the story follows a woman who's visiting her sister and her sister's 3 children in a cramped Los Angeles apartment when they find a mysterious book and idiotically read from it. Yeah, or play a recording of it, I guess.
So we're kind of two minds on this. Like, first off, as a movie, as its own thing, it looks great. It looks scary. It's got the right beats. I love it. But for me, The Evil Dead is a franchise about Ash Williams. and I know, like, you disagree on a fundamental level there. Like, to you, it's about the Deadites.
Yeah.
But I think, like, personally, for me, like, it's about Ash Williams and, like, his battle against the Deadites. Like, Ash, to me, is, like, The Evil Dead's equivalent of Jason and Friday the 13th. Or, like, Freddy and... You can't do those movies, but I know they're the antagonists, kind of, but yeah. But go ahead.
But this isn't the first one to do it without Ash.
Yes, I know that.
They did a previous Evil Dead movie without Ash. It was just called Evil Dead, and that movie was really good. I think what's important to me, to what makes Evil Dead to me, of course, Ash makes Evil Dead in the sense of the original series. What I'm glad they're not doing is that they're not like recasting an Ash-like figure.
Yes.
I don't want them to do that. Like that, he's that trilogy. You know what I mean? And,
right.
And this other one, he's not in that. And that's, to me, that's fine.
I thought of something interesting, like when you said, like, the other night when we were talking about this over Discord, and you said, I wouldn't want them to recast Ash Williams. And I was thinking, yeah, that would be bad. But I thought, because he said he is Bruce Campbell, and I agree. But then I thought about it some more. I thought about, is that necessarily the case? I thought of Hannibal, right? And I thought, like, Mads Mikkelsen is so great, and he is definitely not Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins wasn't the first Hannibal Lecter.
No, he wasn't, but nobody remembers the first Hannibal Lecter.
Ryan Cox.
Yeah, but nobody remembers that. Everybody thinks of Anthony Hopkins.
And it was also a book before that, so it's...
I know there was a book, yes.
There's no Evil Dead book.
Hear me out, and I think why Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter works, and I was thinking to another example, which was the Solo movie, when they cast that guy whose name escapes me at the moment as Han Solo, and that didn't work for me at all. And I was thinking the reason was in Solo, like, that actor was trying too hard to imitate Harrison Ford. When Mads Mikkelsen took on Hannibal Lecter in Hannibal, he was not mimicking Anthony Hopkins. He wasn't taking anything from a previous performance. He was doing his own version.
Yeah.
And I think if they got an Ash Williams, if they got like an actor to do that, who was doing his own version of the character, not just trying to be Bruce Campbell, I think it might just work. But if they got somebody...
I do not want that at all.
but if they got like a try-hard, trying to be Bruce Campbell, trying to imitate that performance, it would fail miserably because nobody else could be Bruce Campbell.
I don't want that at all. Like, not even remotely. I wouldn't mind them creating like an iconic, like, interesting character. I just want it to be a completely different, iconic, interesting character. I don't want it to be Ash. But I also come from a slightly different perspective. I, at one point, really wanted to be a director, and I was getting into, like, film and stuff. Mm-hmm. Because of that, my favorite of the Evil Dead movies was Evil Dead 1. It was the first one. Evil Dead 1 is the kind of movie that if you're interested in filmmaking, when you watch that, you're like blown away by the kind of the camera work and the things that are unique that they're innovative that they were doing in that movie. And some of the kind of ideas they had and the way they handled certain pacing and some of the structural elements, like how, like the last like half of the movie or third of the movie is like almost virtually no dialogue in the entire thing. That kind of stuff is like what really draws me to Evil Dead more than, as much as I love, Ash. The Ash and Evil Dead 1 isn't the Ash that people love. Like, he's not... The Ash that you see in Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness is very different than the Ash in Evil Dead 1. He's just a guy in Evil Dead 1.
Evil Dead 2 is like more of like a remake of Evil Dead 1 than it is a sequel to it.
It's actually really interesting because it's like the first 30 minutes are a remake of Evil Dead. And there's like a direct point where you could literally like cut the two movies together and there's like a trade-off point where it like continues past that.
Oh, wow, interesting.
So basically like in the first Evil Dead movie, it ends with the camera like zooming into Ash's face and him screaming. And there's a part in Evil Dead 2 where Ash gets picked up by the evil and like dragged through the forest. Mm-hmm. And it zooms into his face exactly the same way it does in the first Evil Dead, and then pulls back out and you see him getting spun around and knocked into trees and stuff. If you like cut them together at that point, that's the part of Evil Dead 2 that's a remake of Evil Dead 1 is just that first part up to that point.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
And they did that because they didn't have the rights to their own movie when they wanted to make the second one.
Oh, interesting.
So they were going to do a recap, which is like if you watched Army of Darkness, they used footage from Evil Dead 2 to recap what had happened, you know? They couldn't do that with Evil Dead 1 because they didn't have the rights to their own movie at the time.
Oh, so that's why that turned out like that. Okay.
Yeah. So, and they completely redid it and made it more of a comedy. Like the first one had some kind of cheesy bits or some humor in it, just from the nature of like the style that Randy uses and stuff that made it kind of funny. But for the most part, it was a more serious horror film. To me, when I think of like what needs to be in an Evil Dead movie, like what does an Evil Dead movie have to be? One is that the evil, the Deadites, the things like that, they have to have personality. They can't just be like zombies. They have to be they have to be vicious.
Yeah, they're not generic zombies. They're not mindless creatures. They have intelligence.
And they're mean. They're really mean. And the movie also has to be like relentless in a way. And one of the things I think about is that it's like in the first Evil Dead, there's that moment where the girl gets stabbed in the ankle with a pencil. And it's not just like she gets stabbed, but then it gets twisted around in the wound. Like that like relentlessness of just like, oh, we don't just stab her in the ankle. We like turn it around in there, you know? That's to me what makes Evil Dead. You know, it's that relentlessness. Oh yeah, the bad thing happens, but it just keeps going. Like it doesn't stop, you know? And that's what I'm seeing when I watch like Evil Dead Rise, when I watch the trailer for that. There's like the scene with the cheese grater and like the drill that's going up to the eye and the scalping thing. And it's like I'm seeing that relentlessness. And then there's like all the scenes with the mother who's like possessed, who's like a Deadite in this, and her lines. Like I love the line at the end of the trailer, like mommy's with the maggots now. That's such a Deadite line to say.
Right, yeah.
To me, that's what makes Evil Dead. That's the difference between just Evil Dead and the original Evil Dead trilogy, which is Ash, you know? But that's all coming out on April 21st. I also have to say, I think it's got one of the best horror film trailers I've ever seen.
It was a good trailer.
It's really good. They did a little screw up though, because they released the Green Band trailer and the Red Band trailer at the same time, but they accidentally labeled the Green Band trailer as the Red Band trailer. Initially, they eventually fixed it, but so people were confused about which was the Red Band trailer. It's obvious which is which, because one's like super bloody and gory and the other one isn't as much, but it confused a lot of people initially. Our last movie on our list is The Flash, which is coming out on June 16th. This has suffered multiple delays, setbacks, reshoots, and edits. Apparently there's a bunch of edits that have happened even more recently because of all the stuff with the Snyderverse collapsing and being disassembled. So there's a lot of stuff that was apparently filmed that's not going to be in it because of that.
It's hilarious to think that at one point this was going to be a linchpin of the Snyderverse. This was going to take the Snyderverse and move it forward in a big way. And it's coming out amid, like, the death throes of that universe.
Yeah.
Like, this is no longer pushing anything forward. This is like, yeah, this is it.
This was originally supposed to come out in 2016.
Yes.
Like the first iteration of this. There were other Flash movies that were in development even before that, like 2008 and stuff, but like, so I'm talking about the Ezra Miller Flash movie, you know, like it was originally 2016.
Yeah. Oh, Ezra Miller was always attached to this, obviously. Because Ezra Miller was the character in Zack Snyder's Justice League and Batman vs. Superman.
Their personal troubles are making this even more, like, kind of a chaotic
production.
Even
more chaos for their personal troubles. But yeah, this was originally, I think, supposed to be an adaptation of Flashpoint, and it was supposed to be this universe-changing event where they would use it as a chance to, like, shift around some things in the universe and shake up status quo. Again, it was supposed to push the entire DCEU forward in a big way. And you could see that in the final product, even though I don't think the final product is still Flashpoint technically, but still involves him, the Flash going to multiple universes, or to at least an alternate universe, to at least Michael Keaton's universe, because they got Michael Keaton in here. We
don't even know if he's still in it. There's been so many edits.
Yeah, supposedly.
There's been so much talk about, I know they've also had Ben Affleck's Batman in this as well, and we don't know if he's still in it.
I just saw something this weekend, which was apparently a teaser for, the big trailer that's coming for the Super Bowl for this movie that showed, Michael Keaton's Batman, and then he gets into, his thing that takes him to the Batcave, and it goes down and switches to the Batcave, and out of it, walks Ben Affleck. And so, presumably, they're still in the movie based on that.
Yeah. I mean, there was rumors Henry Cavill had a scene shot that...
I mean, I'm going to be honest here. With what we've seen and heard so far in the marketing, it really feels like Michael Keaton is more the star of this movie than Ezra Miller.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if they can credibly cut him. It seems like he's a huge part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Shannon's supposed to be in this too.
We got Sasha Calle as Supergirl.
This is just crazy.
I saw a rumor. I don't know how true the rumor was, but the rumor was supposedly the events of the movie would have erased Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck from the DCEU timeline, and then it would end with The Flash, Michael Keaton, Sasha Calle, and I think Batgirl, forming a new Justice League.
Batgirl's gone.
Yeah, she's gone. It was supposedly going to end with that. And Michael Keaton was also in the canceled Batgirl film. He was serving as her mentor.
Yeah.
And that never happened. So this is set up for crap that's never going to happen.
The whole question is, what are we actually going to get in this movie? How much of this is going to be on the floor? And how much is going to be in the actual movie now, Right. I mean, it seems kind of crazy.
It just feels irrelevant now.
Yeah.
And also, I don't want Ezra Miller to be, a huge star in the DCEU. I'm sorry, but they're just very problematic.
Yep.
Don't want that.
Yeah. It's such a weird project, and it'll be interesting to see, what form it takes when it comes out, but I'm not too psyched to see it. I don't care about the Snyderverse. I'm glad they're rebooting it. I'm hoping for the cleanest reboot possible. So I don't want any of this, I'm just kind of the saddest thing to me is that Michael Keaton is going to be wasted, And
again, narratively, this is a dead end. This is a Flash movie that presumably is not going to have a sequel, not a sequel in the terms of continuing, this story. It's a dead end. It's completely irrelevant.
Yeah. I mean, there's still several other DC projects too that are going to be that same way. I mean, we have the new Shazam movie too is also coming out this year, and it's the same thing. It's what's the point,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But that's our movies. Now moving on to video games. We have Fire Emblem Engage coming out on January 20th. This was famous because it was an actual legit leak which is so rare for Nintendo games.
Yes.
To get you always see leaks for Nintendo stuff and it's always bullshit. And this is a straight legit leak that happened. At the time this was leaked, it was heavily rumored that the developer Gust was going to be in the development of this. We still don't even know if that's the case, but it looks kind of like a Gust game.
This was revealed officially, back in September? Because Nintendo skipped doing a June Direct last year.
Yeah.
And I believe the pics of this game leaked out late May, early June. The peaks leaked out of this game. And I remember you were heavily skeptical they were real pics.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
The rumor was that Gust was involved in the game. It just looks like a Gust RPG.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like Fire Emblem to me. From the leaks, at least, the leaked pictures. It looked like if you've ever played an Ys game or Trails of Cold Steel or something like that, that's what it just looked like one of those games, So it was kind of weird when that ended up actually kind of being the real thing. And then you started getting other things being kind of confirmed about it and then other rumors that were popping up. There was the rumor that this was like basically done for like a year and was just sitting on a shelf. Like Nintendo didn't know what to do with it or something.
Yeah, and that seems like a likely explanation for why pics of the game were able to leak. Because if it had been done at that point, then yeah, it just provides more of an opportunity for stuff to leak.
Yeah. The thing I'm kind of a little bit lukewarm about this game about is that, and this was also the case for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which ended up turning out to be something I actually really like. But I'm not a big fan of the whole like crossover and you summon heroes kind of from other games kind of thing. It's usually just means the story is bullshit.
So, early impressions from people who are currently reviewing the game have been very positive. The general impression is that this is classic Fire Emblem. They say if you like the GBA games, if you like the GameCube game or the Wii game, you're gonna love this, because this is more in the vein of that than it is Three Houses.
Three Houses is more of what I want, though. Like, I want, like, a good story, and I want, like, good character story, and this just looks like, oh, you summon characters from other worlds, and that basically makes them inconsequential to what's happening, and I don't know, like, that whole kind of game bothers me. It just makes me think of the fucking Fire Emblem Heroes game on mobile, you know?
Yeah, Eurogamer sums it up with their write-up here, which says that after the first 8 chapters, Fire Emblem Engage feels more like Awakening than Three Houses, and that's no bad thing.
No, I guess we have a different value about what's a bad thing.
I guess so. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, unless I start hearing some really bad things about it, I'll probably end up getting it and playing it. But it's just, I want like a good original story. I want them to mature it up even more than Three Houses. You know, I want them to kind of continue in that direction.
Yeah, it looks like they're going backwards in terms of that direction. From what I said, the story is not Three Houses. Like, it's a more basic story.
Yeah, and that's upsetting because it's just like, there's so many like RPGs and strategy and tactical games on like a technical level, and it's become like a trend now where we have like a load of like indie games that do that just basically have no story, and they're all just like mechanics. The thing that you can provide as like a major game release is that you create like an interesting and compelling story for us to partake in. And this just doesn't feel like that. And I say that having not played it. I mean, I was worried about the same thing with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And that ended up just not being an issue. Like, it was such a small part of the game. And it's a meaningful part, but it's such a small part of the game that like, it doesn't really matter. You know, like when you actually start playing through the game, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, these are all like unique characters. And there's just some background details that are about the two worlds crossing over, and it's actually kind of cool. But it's not like it's taken the place of the actual character story or the main story of the main crux of the story of the game. You know, that's still there. So who knows? This could still be a really good game that I'll enjoy. It's just, to me, it's like hitting all the red flags.
Right, yeah, I hear you.
Also coming to Nintendo Switch this year, on March 17th, we have Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon. This is like a storybook style, it looks like very much like an indie game prequel about a young Cereza forming a contract with her first demon, Cheshire, and it apparently ties into a special unlockable chapter in Bayonetta 3, I've beaten Bayonetta 3, but I haven't gotten to that chapter yet,
By the way, a new patch dropped for Bayonetta 3 either today or yesterday, just recently, that makes unlocking that chapter easier.
Yeah, I heard about that. I think what it does is it opens up the keys that you need to unlock it, like when you first go through the levels, whereas I think they're only there after you've beaten the game otherwise. Yeah. And so like that way you can have collected them, and by the time you reach the end of the game, you've already found all the keys just by nature of having gone through that part. Whereas you have to like go back and try to find those keys if you previously in order to get that. But
right, yeah, but this was a surprise. This was announced at the Game Awards last month.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't look anything like Bayonetta.
No, it's not a traditional Bayonetta game. Obviously, this is its own thing. This is being directed by a first-time director at Platinum. Abebe Tenare is the director's name.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this is his first directing job in the industry since joining Platinum Games in 2009.
Yeah, apparently he got hired on and he was really excited to be working on Bayonetta 3. And they were like, well, no, actually, you're going to be doing this other thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks cool. I'm interested. I like Bayonetta a lot. I don't know if it'll be good. It's so different from, it's not at all like Bayonetta, not just from presentation, but from like the gameplay styles of completely different kind of game. So there's like no real way to look at it and go like, oh yeah, as a Bayonetta fan, I'll enjoy this. You just don't know.
No, I mean, you might enjoy it for the lore.
Yeah, I think I'd enjoy it for the lore, and I think perhaps, I mean, it looked pretty fun from what I saw. It doesn't look, like I said, it doesn't look like Bayonetta, but it looks fun.
No, yeah, it's a spin-off, obviously. Yeah, it's not a traditional Bayonetta game at all.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, it was so surprising when it was announced.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what that is. And I'll for sure get that because I'm a Bayonetta fan.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have a little game that nobody's really talking about. It's kind of a shame. I think it's time we give it a spotlight. The spotlight it deserves this whole time that nobody else is giving it. And that is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which is coming on May 12th. This was announced as a sequel to Breath of the Wild at E3 2019 and had been in development since 2017. And the new facets that we've seen to this game from the trailers seem to be that there's a lot more verticality. There's floating islands and stuff.
Yeah, there's a heavy emphasis on being in the sky in this game.
And then seems to be some sort of time manipulation mechanics, but we don't really know fully what those are yet, or how many different types there are yet.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It's a long development game. This is very similar to Majora's Mask, not like the game itself, but like in terms of the development structure, in that Majora's Mask was originally going to be like this very small, kind of like a pre-DLC thing. It was going to be for the 64DD add-on.
Yeah.
And it was an add-on for, like, you'd have to own the cartridge for Ocarina of Time, and then you would get the 64DD game and pop that in, and it would use the same assets, and it was going to be like a very small addition to the game, and then they ended up turning it into like a full-fledged Zelda game that did a lot of like really radically new things. Some things are still like ahead of its time.
Yeah, I love that game to death. Yeah, it turned into a full cartridge game just because the 64DD, it was dead before they even launched it. Like,
it's actually pretty hilarious because the 64DD only came out in Japan, and it came out as like a rental service where you got the 64DD and then they just sent you the games as they came out. Like, you didn't buy games for it; they just kind of came to you. Like, right, oh, you have a 64DD, so here's your next game.
It was very limited, like mail order type thing.
It was weird, like a really weird way of handling the release of that.
Yeah, and it came out in 99 or something. Just like right up against the end of the N64 generation when they were about to release the GameCube. So Nintendo basically sent that out to die in Japan. It like I said, it was a failed project before they even released it.
Yeah.
And it's obvious because like they had bigger plans for that. But yeah, anyway, get back to the game we're talking about.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom, yeah. Like, to me, this seems like it's going to be more ambitious than that just because of the long development time. It's funny to think of all the stuff Majora's Mask went through, you just said, but like, there was a huge gap between the release of that and Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time released in, the holiday season of 1998. Majora's Mask released in 2000. So just like 2 years after.
Yeah.
This is a much larger time gap between the release of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild.
I mean, it was still a big gap with Majora's Mask because it was supposed to be like a year.
Yeah.
And it ended up being like twice as much. But yeah, this is like 6 years plus after the release of Breath of the Wild, So this is one of the longer waits between Zelda games, period.
Yes.
Not just between this is a longer wait than there was between Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild, So I'm excited for it. Breath of the Wild is my favorite video game of all time.
This might just be my game of the year. Definitely has real potential to be my game of the year.
This is one of those cases where you say, if this isn't game of the year, then like Nintendo blew it somewhere.
I would normally say that, except for like the year that we're in and how stacked it is. Nintendo has some real competition this year, as we will talk about.
Not my opinion, but I don't think there's anything that holds a candle to what this should be. Who knows if it is what it will be, you know?
Right, yeah.
But that's my own personal taste. The next game we're going to be talking about is Spider-Man 2, which is coming in fall. And this is going to feature both Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And it's also going to feature Tony Todd voicing Venom.
That's going to be awesome. Getting Venom in it is cool. I don't think you've played the original Spider-Man. I enjoyed it. It's basically an open world Spider-Man game where you swing around New York and you take care of like crimes as they happen. But then there's also like story missions that you do. What made the game so good was basically they recreating New York, but mostly like how Spider-Man controlled, how Spider-Man felt. Like,
oh, I thought you were going to say it was the low fidelity people on that one boat out in the middle of the ocean.
Jesus. Yes.
That's what made it great.
How Spider-Man feels, like the web slinging feels great. The combat as Spider-Man, his moveset feels so good. And genuinely, it's a really good Spider-Man story. Like, I think they nailed all the aspects of Spider-Man that they needed to nail.
Did you play both Spider-Man and the Miles Morales Spider-Man game?
Yes, but I haven't completed Miles Morales yet, so I
Which one did you like more, at least from what you've played?
Oh, I don't know. They're the same game.
So yeah,
I like them both.
You get to have both of them now.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, that's going to be the big Sony exclusive this year. Definitely is going to be Spider-Man 2. And
yeah, I think that's
maybe I'll play that exclusive if it comes to PC, you know, that first one did.
Yeah.
So if that ends up hitting PC, then maybe I'll end up getting around to that, but who knows? Our next game up is, the other, I think, game that you're really excited for, which is Starfield.
I think we know, or if we don't know, we should know that. I'm a big Bethesda fanboy. I got into Bethesda games when I got my Xbox 360. The first game of theirs I played was Oblivion. I fell in love with it. You know, I fell in love with Fallout and then Skyrim, obviously. And yeah, this is their newest open world RPG. This one's set in space. So it's a brand new IP and it's really exciting to see what Bethesda is going to do with a space exploration RPG.
Yeah, this is their first new IP for Bethesda in 25 years.
Yes.
It was announced at E3 2018. Todd Howard of Bethesda described it as Skyrim in space. And the lead artist, Istvan Peli, I don't know how to pronounce his name, referred to the game's style as NASA punk.
Yeah, I think that fits based on what I've seen. The artwork and stuff of this game looks gorgeous. So I can't wait for this. This is going to steal a lot of my time when this comes out. I can already tell.
But then you took a blaster to the knee.
Yes. So for me right now, it's like this and Zelda are like two of my most anticipated games for the year.
I think Starfield does not yet have a firm release date. I guess it's not coming in the first half. That's about what we know.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that's happening. I'm going to guess like the earliest it's going to be released is the summer, but I think more realistically, it's probably a fall game at this point.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you might as well just delay it to fall and make it your big holiday title.
Yeah, exactly.
And our last game we're going to be talking about is just DLC for a game, actually. And that is Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Keanu Reeves is returning as Johnny Silverhand. He'll be joined by Idris Elba, who will be playing FIA agent Solomon Reed, and Sasha Grey as a radio DJ named Ash. The story is going to be about V, the main character of the series, your created character whose name is V, getting mixed up in conflicts in the Pacifica combat zone of Night City. And she's going to end up, as we see in the trailer, pledging allegiance to the NUSA, the new United States of America. It's going to have like 3 new areas, a bunch of new music, weapons, cyberware, vehicles, stories, quests, characters, all of that. And interestingly, it is not coming to the last generation consoles, the PS4 and Xbox One. Or Stadia, surprise.
Right. Yeah, I wonder why that's not coming to Stadia. Rest in peace, Stadia. But yeah, like if you were holding on to a last gen console and you're still playing Cyberpunk on last gen consoles, then sorry to say you're not going to get to experience this.
Yeah.
Yeah, time to upgrade.
See, I'm excited. I played Cyberpunk on Stadia, and I was super relieved to find out that I was able to transfer my save file from Stadia to PC. So I got it up and running on Steam. I got my old Stadia save file running. Now that I have a gaming PC, I've bought Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk. I got my money back, and then I went to Steam to buy it, and it was already half off. So basically, I got paid $30 to get this version of Cyberpunk. CD Projekt Red paid me $30 basically to play this version. And so I'm excited for Phantom Liberty to come out. It was as many bugs and issues as it had, as much hate as this game got when it was released, as much complaints, as many class action lawsuits as came out about this game. It was like my favorite game of the year when it came out, and it is one of my favorite games of all time because of the story and the world and just how detailed and just lived in the world feels in Cyberpunk. Like how much detail and effort was put into that really sells it. And it's a great cross-media franchise too, because, you know, they had that anime Edge Runners, which was also amazing and really heavily tied into the same world. So I'm super excited about Phantom Liberty coming out. We do not yet have a time. Like Starfield, we do not know when this DLC is coming out.
Yes.
And that is it for our video games. Now we're moving on to TV streaming. First things first, The Last of Us, which is coming very soon on January 15th, this Sunday on HBO, features Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey from Game of Thrones as Ellie. It's also going to be featuring Gabriel Luna, who was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was the Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes.
Is going to be playing Tommy, Joel's brother. Anna Torv from Fringe is in this as Tess. Marla Dandridge from The Flight Attendant will be playing Marlene, and Nick Offerman, the man himself, will be playing Bill. I don't know what any of these names are because I've never played this game.
Right.
I have no interest in playing this game.
Some of the first game, but this show's been getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah, I have no interest in playing this game, and I'm psyched for the show. To me, this is like the format for this kind of story, you know?
Right, yeah, exactly. This is being done as a prestige drama on HBO. We're getting a lot of buzz. The impressions from people who've seen episodes for review have been really positive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know too much about the story because I've only played through like half of the first game.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm excited to watch this.
Yeah, this is based on, as we mentioned, it's based on a game by Naughty Dog. The showrunners for this are Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl on HBO, which was like a major critical hit on the network, and Neil Druckmann, who actually wrote the game that this is based on.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
you're going to have some real authenticity there.
Well, Neil Druckmann's like the president of Naughty Dog.
Yeah, so you're going to have a lot of like accuracy in this adaptation, with Neil Druckmann himself acting as a co-showrunner alongside Craig Mazin, who
which is
has a lot of
interesting.
prestige
I'm pretty
credit
sure
already.
Craig Mazin's going to take up the bulk of showrunning duties.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Neil Druckmann also has like several game projects that he needs to attend to.
Yeah. It just shows like he's going to have a lot of involvement though.
Yeah, he's going to have a lot of involvement in it.
So this next one is pretty crazy. Party Down is returning for its third season on February 24th on Starz. I think it's been something like 12 years since the last season of Party Down. So this is a pretty big one. It's not quite as crazy as like when Twin Peaks came back, but it's still pretty crazy to be off the air for like 12 years and come back.
David Rich's Party Down.
The original writers are returning. It's John Enbaum, Rob Thomas, who we know from Veronica Mars, Dan Etheridge, and Paul Rudd was a writer on Party Down and the new season of Party Down.
Oh, interesting.
And John Enbaum is going to be serving as showrunner. He did for the original series as well. Returning cast includes Adam Scott, Jane Lynch, Ken Marino, Martin Starr, Ryan Hansen, and Megan Mullally. They're all returning. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, Lizzie Kaplan will not be returning. She just has a busy career and wasn't able to. But we have some new people joining the cast, including Jennifer Garner, Tyler Jackson Williams, Zoe Chow, and James Marsden, Cyclops from X-Men, will be joining the cast of Party Down. So, yeah, I don't know if you've seen Party Down. Party Down is hilarious. It's really funny. It's really good. And it's exciting to see that it's going to be coming back on February 24th on Starz, which I do not have. So I guess I'll have to subscribe or something. Our next series we have up here is The Three Body Problem. This is where we're hitting into TBD territory. The rest of the streaming shows that we're going to be mentioning are all to be determined release dates, which means they might not even end up hitting this year. Some things might get delayed and pushed off. But right now it's supposed to be this year, and that's The Three Body Problem is coming to Netflix. This is based on the international hit novels by Liu Cixin. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sorry for that. This is going to be from showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Wise, who of course did the Game of Thrones series. Maybe that's going to make you guys nervous listening. The one thing you can say though is that this is based on a book series that is complete, whereas Game of Thrones was pretty much universally beloved for the seasons that were based on the books, and it started becoming less and less beloved as it went away from the books, because there weren't any books out to finish that story. But in this case, the books are complete for the entire story, so hopefully that means that there's not going to be an issue. In addition to David Benioff and D.B. Wise, they're also going to be joined by Alexander Wu, who was the creator and showrunner of season 2 of The Terror, which was a seasonal anthology series on AMC. Cast-wise, there's going to be a few Game of Thrones alums coming to this project, including John Bradley, who played Samwell, Jonathan Pryce, who played the High Sparrow, and Liam Cunningham, who played Davos. They're all reuniting with D&D on this series. New cast includes Eliza Gonzalez from Alita Battle Angel and Benedict Wong from Doctor Strange. That's Wong. So, not only is it is phase 4 was the phase of Wong in the MCU, and now he's got his own show on Netflix. The story of this, it's kind of complex. It's hard to break everything down, and we're not going to bother going through everything because we just basically have to recite the whole book.
I'm just going to say, I know nothing about this. I'm kind of wary of Benioff and Weiss at this point. This is not necessarily something I'm looking forward to at all.
It's a big project. It's got a very complex plot, the books do, involving a VR game about aliens making a new planet a survivable home where they have to refigure out how a calendar would work, how you would survive the certain kind of natural disasters that would happen on that planet versus the alien's home planet. There's stories about labor camps, cults, suicides. There's a bunch of stuff that's all kind of happening around the same time that it's a big mystery about what's going on, but it seems to have something to do with terraforming another planet for human life. That seems to be kind of what the story's generally about, but in a more vague kind of early stages, theoretical way, I guess. The next series we're going to mention here is Time Bandits. Again, no release yet. This is coming on Apple TV+. This is a remake of the Terry Gilliam classic. Terry Gilliam will be producing, and this will be with Taika Waititi, Jermaine Clement, and Ian Morris are going to be working on the show, with Taika Waititi acting, I believe, as showrunner for this. The cast includes Lisa Kudrow from Friends, Charlene Yee, who's a comedian. We saw her in the Twin Peaks: The Return. She had a brief but memorable scene in. And Kel-El Tuck, a young child actor named after Superman. This was shot in Wellington, New Zealand. It's shot as 1920s New York, but in Wellington, New Zealand. And it's going to follow a ragtag group of time travelers, people who travel time and space, who end up getting a new person in their crew, an 11-year-old history nerd. You've seen Time Bandits, right? The movie?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a very weird, funny, interesting movie. So wildly imaginative. And it'll be interesting to see how they kind of work that out as a series. But Taika Waititi, if you're going to go for really weird, might be the right person to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's going to be to be determined on Apple TV+. Hopefully it comes out this year. We'll find out. Then we have The Penguin, also TBD on HBO Max. This is a standalone spin-off of The Batman, starring Colin Farrell, who'll be reprising his role as the Penguin / Oz Cobblepot. It also stars Kristen Milioti as Sophia Falcone, who is a daughter of Carmine Falcone, who ends up challenging the Penguin for control of Gotham. There's supposed to be a bunch of other criminal elements at play as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of about
this is about the gang elements of Gotham. Matt Reeves has also said this will tie into the Batman 2, which he is currently deep into the middle of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's going to be interesting. HBO, not a stranger to doing spin-off TV streaming series of their big films. They already did one for Suicide Squad, a little thing called Peacemaker. You might have heard of it. And so this is a continuation of that policy. But again, like if you listen to our last podcast, if you listen to last week, then you know how much we love the Batman here at this. So we're pretty excited for this.
Yeah. Matt Reeves is going to be producing. He is not going to be directing any of the episodes, though. He's busy with other things. Lauren LaFranc is going to be acting as showrunner. She had previously worked on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She wasn't the showrunner for that, but she worked as a writer on that show.
Right.
The last TV series we have is Justified, City Primeval, which again, to be determined time on FX.
We don't actually have a release date for this, except that it's presumably this year.
Mm-hmm. This is, of course, based on an Elmore Leonard novel. This one is based on City Primeval, High Noon in Detroit. It's going to have Timothy Olyphant reprising his role as Raylan Givens. Dave Andron and Michael Diner are both going to be working on this show as the showrunners. They both worked on Justified. They weren't the showrunners for Justified, but they both worked on Justified.
Oh, okay. Right.
After returning to Miami, Raylan ends up in Detroit hunting the Oklahoma wild man, Clement Mansell, who's going to be played by Narcos's Boyd Holbrook. So that's the premise of the show. It's going to take place in Detroit. It's interesting. I talked about on the last podcast a movie called Barbarian. That took place in Detroit. It's an interesting setting because Detroit used to be a big city and it is a huge mess right now.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting setting.
One of the villains in the original Justified show, was the Detroit Mafia, coming into Kentucky, trying to gain a foothold in Kentucky. So that's interesting. So that's like another connection you could make. But yeah, this is going to be interesting because this is like a bit of a sequel to Justified, but they're also stressing that this isn't Justified. This isn't going to be strictly a continuation of Justified.
I think the entire supporting cast is different. It's like Raylan's the only continuing, you might see some of the other characters, but Raylan's the only person that's really carrying over here. Yeah, it's interesting. And like I said, Detroit's a really interesting setting.
Yes, it is.
More stuff keeps taking place there because it's kind of like a place that if you went there now, you'd be kind of shocked. You're like, wait, I'm in America? Like, what's going on?
Right. And I just love the character. I love the character of Raylan Givens as portrayed by Timothy Olyphant. Justified is one of my all-time favorite shows. That show was so good. I can't believe they're bringing him back.
An interesting piece of trivia about this show is that not Justified, but this new one, City Primeval, is that Quentin Tarantino, when this was first rumored to be coming out, this series, before it was announced, part of the rumor was that Quentin Tarantino was going to be directing a bunch of the episodes, apparently, or all of the episodes of this series. That turns out not to be the case. That is not happening.
Shocking
but that was one of the first things that we heard about this show.
Yeah, I knew that was bullshit. His name gets attached to a bunch of stuff that never happens.
Yeah, he's a huge Elroy Leonard fan though, so Elmore Leonard fan.
Oh yeah. It would have been interesting, but
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this though. This is probably my most anticipated show on the entire list, to be honest.
And that is it for our shows. Now we're going to be moving on to Marvel Studios. At first I had this section labeled as our MCU section, but one of the projects technically isn't an MCU project. It is Marvel Studios though.
Yes.
Who usually that's the big differentiator between Sony Marvel stuff and some of the old Marvel TV stuff. Marvel Studios is pretty much everything they did was MCU. So this is an order of releases that we know so far, and that starts off with Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, coming on February 17th, featuring the return of Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas. Corey Stoll is actually returning as well. Right, he was Yellow Jacket in the first one. He's going to be returning as MODOK in this one.
Okay.
Some of the other small players like David Dastmalchian, who was also in the Suicide Squad. He was Polka Dot Man, and he's been in Ant-Man, in the Ant-Man movies. He's returning. Randall Park is returning as his FBI agent character. We also have Catherine Newton will be replacing Abby Ryder Forston and Emma Furman as Cassie Lang. This is the third actress to play her now. And we have Jonathan Majors as Kang, Bill Murray as Krylar, who's a character with a past history with Janet, and William Jackson Harper from The Good Place as Quaz. So that's exciting to see him get something high profile like this.
Yeah, it's good. I guess it kills the rumors that he was going to be Reed Richards. But But yeah, it's good to see him again. I love him from The Good Place. Honestly, this looks great. It's got a good cast. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I love this cast. I love William Jackson Harper. I love Jonathan Majors, especially
he's so good in Loki
his appearance at the end of Loki. Oh yeah,
he's a real scene stealer.
Yes, and he's going to be equally as good of a scene stealer in this movie. I can just tell. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. It's probably like the second most anticipated Marvel film of next year.
Yeah, probably. And it's coming really soon, too. So, just over a month away. The next thing we have here has kind of a loose spring 2023 release plan for Disney+. We don't know the exact date yet, but it's supposed to be in spring. And that is Secret Invasion. This sees the return of Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, Ben Mendelsohn as the character Talos, who is the leader of the shape-shifting
the Skrulls.
The Skrulls, yes.
Yeah, the Skrulls.
He was the leader of the Skrulls in Captain Marvel. He's returning. Kobe Smulders is returning as Maria. Martin Freeman is returning as Everett. Don Cheadle is returning as Rhodey. They're all reprising the roles. And new cast members include Kingsley Ben-Adir, who is going to be playing a leader of an opposing Skrull faction. Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones, Daenerys herself, is in this series. Olivia Colman from The Favorite, and Dermot Mulroney from Zodiac is going to be playing the new president in the Marvel Universe, the president of the United States in the Marvel Universe.
So yeah, this actually looks interesting. I'm going to say, like, it's about time they did, like, a Nick Fury-centric project. Nick Fury has been part of the MCU since the beginning, and
focusing more on, like, espionage.
Samuel L. Jackson has never got a project focusing on him and his character, and I think this is finally that project. From the trailers, it looks a lot better than most of the recent Marvel streaming stuff, so I'm hoping, like, it hits, like, a high level of quality, because Secret Invasion is, like, it's genuinely a great idea for a story with the Skrulls and their ability to literally be anybody. This is very loosely based off of a major crossover event series from a long time back, like I think early 2000s, where it was discovered that a lot of the active heroes and villains in the Marvel Universe were secretly Skrulls. And I think Nick Fury finds that out, and it just spirals out from there to an all-out war with the Skrulls. And it ends with Norman Osborn taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously no Norman Osborn in the MCU, so...
We do have a Thunderbolts movie coming up, though, so...
Right, so it might tie into that.
This is going to feature Kyle Bradstreet, who worked on Mr. Robot, is going to be the showrunner on this project. So if you had a show to kick off on that would be a good lead-in to working on something like Secret Invasion, you could do a lot worse than Mr. Robot.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 coming out on May 5th.
My most anticipated Marvel film coming out next year.
This is going to have, the return of Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Batista.
We know the whole cast right now. Yeah. It's got your favorites. I think we should add the new people joining the cast for the first time. Will Poulter as Adam Warlock. Chuk Wee. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry.
Dude from Peacemaker.
Yes.
Joining as the High Evolutionary.
Awesome guy from Peacemaker who was the alien, the good alien.
We're also getting the return, besides of the Guardians, we have Sylvester Stallone and Michael Rosenbaum returning as the Ravager characters.
Yes.
And this is the last Marvel project for James Gunn.
Yeah, this is James Gunn's last project. This is also the conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. James Gunn said he wrote this as a conclusion to the story, and that, it's designed that going forward, we won't see this iteration of the Guardians again.
Yeah.
Like, if Marvel decides to do more Guardians of the Galaxy, it's going to be like with a different team.
There could still be some returning characters, but a lot of them already said they're done. Like Dave Bautista said
said he doesn't want to do any more Marvel movies. So yeah.
And I think a lot of other ones that probably would drop out as well. Like they're kind of like
Also narrative wise, this is supposed to be written to a point where like these characters, at least some characters, probably aren't coming back.
Yeah. That seems to be heavily implied that there's going to be some big stuff happening.
that doesn't necessarily mean like deaths, but it just means like, certain characters are going to be done after this movie.
There is a shot in the trailer of Star-Lord making a face that seems to be of utter horror and grief. So,
right.
We'll have to see what ends up happening with that, but it's exciting because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was supposed to come out a while ago. I think it was a Phase 3 movie originally.
Yeah, and then the whole thing with James Gunn happened where bad faith conservatives tried to use cancel culture to get James Gunn canceled, and it worked temporarily, but just long enough to delay this movie. And the movie got further delayed when James Gunn signed on to do the Suicide Squad, and that was before Marvel Disney hired him back for Guardians of the Galaxy after huge fan outcry over his firing in the first place, which was a huge mistake by Disney to be that reactionary to silly bullshit.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's back for one last movie.
Yeah.
And that's coming on May 5th. Next up, I mentioned that there was something that wasn't in the MCU but was still made by Marvel Studios, and that is this, X-Men 97, coming in winter 2023 on Disney+. This is a direct continuation of X-Men the Animated Series. It's being written by Beau DeMayo, who worked on The Witcher, among a few other projects. He is going to be serving as the showrunner on this. Most of the surviving original voice cast is returning to their role. Some of the voice actors, I believe, have passed away since. The voice actor who played Jubilee, I believe, she's returning, but not as Jubilee. Because she apparently decided that she didn't want to play Jubilee because she's white and Jubilee's Asian, and decided that she wanted to let that role go to an Asian actress, but she will be returning, just not as Jubilee.
Okay.
This is going to be produced by Marvel Studios, but as I said, not as part of the MCU. I'm a huge fan of X-Men the Animated Series. Before we got started on this podcast today, Will and I were talking about our histories with X-Men and Marvel Comics and stuff, and I was mentioning how, to me, when I think of X-Men Comics, more than X-Men Comics, I'm thinking of the animated series. To me, that was my X-Men Comics.
Yeah, that series was my gateway into X-Men. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have cared about X-Men if it wasn't for that series.
So the real question is going to be if they're going to be able to keep up that level of writing, because it's a different writer. We'll have to see we'll have to see how that comes out. It had really quite mature writing for something that was a children's cartoon.
There's also the issue of nostalgia, the question of the last time I watched this, I was 11 or 12 years old. Is it going to hold up for me?
Maybe we should do some kind of a select rewatch or something where we watch maybe 10 episodes, 10 specific episodes or something, and do a podcast on it.
Yeah, maybe.
See how it holds up. That'd be an interesting little project to do before the new show comes out.
Yeah.
And a good way to get ourselves caught back up too on some of the events. But that's coming in winter 2023. Also coming in winter 2023, or possibly 2024, is going to be Agatha, Coven of Chaos to Disney+. This is going to be created and run by WandaVision showrunner Jacqueline Schaefer. Catherine Hahn, of course, is returning as Agatha Harkness / Agnes. Deborah Jo Rupp as Sharon Davis / Ms. Hart. That's the mom from the Kitty from that 70s show.
Yes.
She's, if you remember her in WandaVision, she's reprising as well. Emma Caulfield Ford, who was in Buffy, and was also in WandaVision, is going to be reprising her character in that as well. Joining the cast is Aubrey Plaza, which is the big one. But then we also have Joe Locke, who's become kind of a real blowout star recently because of the Heartstopper series. Ellie Ahn from Raising Dion. Maria Dizia from Orange is the New Black. Sashir Zamata from Woke. And Patty Lapone from Penny Dreadful are all going to be joining the cast for this new series, which is a spin-off of WandaVision, focusing on Agatha Harkness.
Yeah, I like Catherine Hahn. I like the character enough. I have to see what this is about. I can't say it's one of my most anticipated things the next year, but
it's got Aubrey Plaza in it, man.
All right. It's got Aubrey Plaza. Yeah.
She's got to be playing a witch, right?
I would assume.
If she's not playing a witch, that's kind of like an injustice, isn't it?
Maybe she's playing a tax collector.
Yeah. She's just playing a boring housewife.
Yeah.
She's got to be playing a witch. She's got to be a witch. It's Aubrey Plaza, man.
This is about a coven, not just one witch.
Just remember the last Marvel thing she was in.
Yes, I remember. I remember. This has the potential to be good, or it has the potential to be mediocre. Don't know yet. I'm looking forward to getting the first trailer, getting the first real look at this.
Well, it's the same showrunner who did WandaVision, and in my opinion, WandaVision is the best Disney Plus show, like, period.
Right.
Like, not just Marvel, like, period.
Until it drops the ball at the ending, but yeah.
Even with it dropping the ball at the ending, it's still the best show on Disney Plus, in my opinion. It's still a really good show. I don't think a show is made up entirely of its ending. I think the whole journey is what makes it.
I agree with you.
So
I'm just saying this could be great. This could not be great. We don't know. We haven't seen anything from it.
I have a lot of faith in this, just based on who's involved and the fact that it is kind of a continuation of what happened in WandaVision, which I loved so dearly. So I am very much looking forward to Agatha Coven of Chaos coming either in 2023 or 2024. It's currently scheduled for 2023, I believe. We'll have to see what ends up happening with that. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about today could just get delayed off into some random year. But hopefully it's all coming this year. That's it for our podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about The Last of Us. We're going to be talking about the first episode of The Last of Us, which is going to be airing on HBO this Sunday. So watch that show and tune in and hear us discuss it, because that's what we're going to be talking about for probably the foreseeable future. We're going to be doing The Last of Us as our catalog show. So thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page, our SoundCloud page. If you go to our website, thetotalscreen.com, you can find the container story for any of our podcast episodes. And if you open up that container story, you'll find links to all of our relevant pages where you can find our podcast and everything else. You can also get our podcast by searching for it on Apple Podcasts or Pocket Cast or wherever you get your podcasts. Just look us up, The Total Screen or OnScreen, and you should be able to find us. If you don't, just try looking around, I guess, a little bit. We're a small podcast. We might not be the first result that pops up. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.